attending.
Mhm. Sister Lourdes said she won't be here because there's a celebration of the World Day of Consecrated Life.
Mm.
Yes, today. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll keep in our thoughts, in our hearts, all of the consecrated people that can't be here because they're busy celebrating as they should
And
be.
and the
Uh,
associates, that will be, I hope, ASAP. The associates received a text from our general about this day of consecrated life.
mhm. There's a special message that the Superior General of the Eudists recommended that everyone read. We're going to send that out in the e-news here in a couple of weeks about the World Day of Consecrated Life.
Oh, good.
Uh, there are also consecrated people joining us here. All the Eudist priests are consecrated, uh, and so we're celebrating them today. There are consecrated people joining us by watching the recordings on YouTube, like Sister Mary Francis, who's in the same order as Sister Lourdes.
The
Uh,
first consecration is baptism.
that's a really Eudist point there also, that when we talk about consecrated life, there's special vowed consecrated life, and there is all of us who are baptized and consecrated, so set together apart from the world,
Mm.
consacrated,
Oh, yeah.
right? That's a very Eudist thought that everyone who's baptized is united and together set apart, right? Consacrated. Uh, so the consecration of baptism is a beautiful thing that we can also think about on this World Day of Consecrated
Oh,
Life.
even Elizabeth is here.
Hi, Jordan. Welcome. Glad you made it.
Where is
Hi,
he?
Steve.
Oh, there you are.
Good to see you, sir.
Hi, Father. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
How are
Good.
you?
Good. How about yourself, Father?
Good, 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 very good.
Hey, Jordan.
So
Okay.
I was to
Hi,
congratulate
Eileen.
Hi,
uh,
Jordan.
Grace because she has no time to explain to us, but her name is Grace, and they were really filled with grace when they visited. They left East Africa to go to West Africa to visit, the Eudist communities. It's a great endeavor, and the associate decided to do that. Leave
Mm.
Kenya to go to Togo, Benin, Ivory Coast, and visiting the communities. It's a wonderful initiative of the associates. So I want to
Thank you.
congratulate you, Grace.
Thank you very much. It was such a great experience. And I think one thing that I learned from St. John Newt is that language is not a barrier. You can
It is not?
yes, you can still evangelize even when both of you are not able to speak the same language.
It's really big for the associates from the English-speaking Kenya to go visit
Imagine.
French-speaking West Africa.
Yeah,
That's
and we had there the Sunday of the Epiphany, and so I told them we are coming all the way from the east.
Yes.
Oh,
like the Magi coming from the east
The Magi are coming from the east, and
on
we
the
were
feast of
bringing back,
that's
and we are
beautiful.
bringing back their son, Saint John. I mean, Father Jean Paul, who had been in the east for 10 years, to come back to celebrate with them in the. It was such a beautiful time, and also just meeting all the communities in Ivory Coast, in Benin. We passed through Togo, then we were able to reunite with the provincial superior in Benin the last day, and he took us to the
Yeah.
airport. Yeah, it was a great
Can
experience.
you imagine? I was invited and then I couldn't do it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the beginning, it looked like it's not possible, but yeah, it was great. And we could sing in Kiswahili in the church, and they they were just clapping. They don't know what we are saying there.
So, Grace, now you're fluent in French?
And no, no way. I'm a beginner. I do greetings and my French is over. So we
I
had a
think
lot of
one of the things I
translations.
find really beautiful about the Eudist family is when you really tap into it, you've got this global network and you can
Yeah.
hear about the differences between the eastern coast of Africa and the western coast of Africa and uh, just the whole world. And Elizabeth, you've been to Eudist events in Ecuador and
Yes,
in France.
Canada, France,
Ah.
Italy. Yes, it's very special. I had hoped maybe to go to Africa, and I wanted to
Mhm.
hear about Janet and Marsha visiting you. Does that?
Well, they couldn't because they had a
They did
document
not come.
problem.
Unfortunately, they could not arrive here.
Oh,
They lost their tickets.
oh,
They did not have a clearance to. Of course, today it says on the internet that you can fly to Kenya without a visa, but you need, it's called an authorization, which you have to fill in 72 hours before you leave. So that I get to the airport, you will get a visa. But their agent told them they don't need it. So they were calling us in the middle of the night when they were boarding, and they were told they could not come to Nairobi.
oh, oh my goodness.
It's unfortunate we could not help them. It is
Mm.
still very sad. I'm not even been able to talk to them. I'm still very sad with that event.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's kind of bring our focus in from the global family back into
Yes.
this text that we've been reading. Both are absolutely relevant and absolutely beautiful and part of this experience of formation to become part of the Eudist family. And so I'm really glad to hear about the travels and the connections between the Eudist family. We're also getting into our time that we were going to talk about the kingdom of Jesus. So we'll bring our focus back in. The reading really captures John Eudes in his very bullet point thinking. And I want to be careful to kind of serve both groups. There may be people in the group that got to do all of the reading, and there may be people in the group that didn't get to do it all. And so if you got a chance to do it all, there's so much in these bullet points that every single one, he goes into this detail that's really beautiful and really evocative. He really like opens up things to think about. Um, and if you didn't get to do the reading, the overview is he talks about 3 types of detachment and 5 types of prayer. And I want to touch on every single one of those fingers today. So we may move a little bit on the fast side, but he talks about 3 types of detachment. If you zoom into that, he's got 2 reasons for self-abnegation. He's got 5 types of prayer, and then he has, you zoom in on that, different qualities of prayer that can make your conversation into something that is divinely unitive. How to tell the difference between a useless, ephemeral conversation that will evaporate at the end versus a conversation that is one limb of the body touching another limb of the mystical body and having this beautiful moment of union. And so even if you did get to do the reading or if you didn't, I want to kind of have this red thread that we highlight here. It's all in the context of this mystical body spirituality. And so when John Eudes talks about detachment, he's talking about detaching yourself from being a body that's all by itself and attaching yourself to the mystical body, which is a whole bunch of subjects all brought together into one. Pope Benedict calls it a plural subjectivity, which if you break into that word, it's gnarly. Like, how does that work? But the mystical body spirituality is a whole bunch of human subjects also being one human subject together. Kind of mind-blowing, if you ask me. And so you've got this, he talks about the spirit of Christ, which he's very distinct in not using the word the spirit of Jesus, the spirit of Christ being the whole body that includes us, not just Jesus of Nazareth, who was the Palestinian body that walked around in that coast, the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, right? So Christ, the total Christ. Um, and so when he talks about detachment, it has to do with becoming attaching ourselves to that one mystical body that is so miraculous. And when he talks about prayer, which is an experience of union, it's not only uniting the limbs with the head, it's also uniting the limbs with the limbs. So if you didn't get a chance to do the reading, or if it ended up feeling like a whole bunch of unrelated bullet points, I'm hoping that that can kind of bring it all together into one bigger picture that you can see from a bird's eye view. Any thoughts on that before we dive in deep?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So did I misunderstand the assignment? I thought we were supposed to read to page 24. I didn't know we were supposed to do that about the prayer.
24.
That's where it starts on about the prayer.
24 is the third foundation.
Page 24 is the fourth foundation of, yeah,
Yeah, that's where the fourth foundation starts.
right.
I was hoping that we would read to page 32, which includes not just the third, but also the fourth foundation.
I don't know. I guess I misunderstood the reading. Okay, that's okay.
All right. Okay.
Same
If
here.
you get a chance in this coming week to read between 24 and 32, there's some
Yeah.
really good stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't get a chance, hopefully this overview gives you a sense of what's in there.
Mhm.
Life happens. And that's one of the things John Eudes is really attentive to in his spirituality. Any other thoughts before we dive in to the deep detail?
Yes, one more thing.
Uh-huh.
I had a really hard time with detaching from God.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's something.
Yeah, I reread that 3 times, that
Okay.
whole section, because I was just, yeah. So I hope you'll talk about that.
Yeah. And so it is this concept of detachment from God, I think, is one of the really unique things that John Eudes contributes. And it's one that can take some digging to get our mind into it. And as I was reading it ahead and thinking about it, I kept coming back to Ignatian spirituality. And so I love Eudes spirituality, and I love how John Eudes presents things. But this is one of the places where I'm really curious why John Eudes chose the word detachment instead of the word that Saint Ignatius chose, which is indifference. And there are things in the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius that talk about why he would choose the word indifference instead of detachment. And uh, one of the things that really highlighted that for me, I was talking with my mother at one point, and she said, "How is it that God would want a mother to not be attached to her children?"
Mhm.
And so she was really struggling with spiritual literature that talked about detaching. And so this is one of the places where I think Ignatius might have a better word for it than John Eudes got. Um, the idea of indifference. So if the person that I love wants to do thing number one, I I am good. Um, Ignatius says this, if God does this in my life, I am good with that. If God does this in my life instead, I am also good with that. Right? That's this topic, this idea of indifference. Eh, the person that I love has so much freedom that if they make one choice versus another choice, my love for them has no difference. Indifference, right? Is an interesting thing to kind of keep in mind when we're reading anything in Catholic spiritual literature about detachment. And a lot of the scriptural language talks about detaching. But I think Ignatius, his overlay of that and say, yes, and when we say detachment, we mean indifference. It's no less love. It is more love with more freedom. Um, that's intense and meaty material. Did we go too fast on that? Any thoughts on that?
Steve,
Could
I
we,
have one for you, Steve. So when I read this over the weekend, what really stood out to me was right in the beginning over number two, vocal prayer. And St. John Eudes says something in the respect to not reciting too many vocal prayers. He says, where is it? In this way, your prayer will be both vocal and mental. If, however, you get in the habit of reciting many vocal prayers mechanically and inattentively, you will leave God's presence more distracted, colder, and less generous in His love than you were when you entered. For this reason, I advise you to confine yourself to relatively few vocal prayers, apart when apart from those you are obliged to say, and to develop the habit of saying them devoutly with great attention and application of the mind to God.
Mm-hmm.
As far as vocal prayers, St. John Eudes wasn't really how was he on group prayer?
So for everyone else, this is on page 27.
Yeah.
John Eudes talks about vocal prayer. Um, and when you dig into his section on vocal prayer, it can be a really good way to get together with other people that are praying at the same time. But um, for example, I knew some people who were really fixated on the idea of praying the full rosary. And so they had it in their mind that they had to say the Hail Mary 150 times every single day. And then John Paul II came out with the mysteries of light, the luminous mysteries. And then these people thought they were fixated on the number that they now had to say 200 Hail Marys every single day. And so if you were to contrast that with processing the movements of your tongue 200 times a day versus a single Hail Mary where you're connecting with the other human being named Mary, and you say, hey, you're alive and I'm alive. I think that's the point that John Eudes is making in that passage is when you're praying, you are connecting one alive human person with another alive human person, even if they're not walking around on the earth anymore. Right? And so one Hail Mary, which is closer to a hello than to a Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you, blah, 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 blah. Like the movements of the tongue, right? The movements of the tongue don't generate magic. It's a person-to-person encounter. Does that make sense?
So I'm looking at it in respect to ecumenism. Like last week there was a Christian uh, um, Unity Day over at the Bethlehem Lutheran Church. And so, a lot of if not all of the prayers or I don't think anything that was said there is ever recited in the order of Mass at St. Patrick's.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that's what I'm trying to say is St. John Eudes you already said there wasn't really much ecumenism going on at that time, was there?
There was a lot of interfaith murder at that time. So ecumenism was in a very specific context, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, and so one of the things that I think it comes out is with let's put a pin in this and come back to it when we're done with detachment and come in on prayer. I'm really glad you brought it up because I think before we leave it, I would say vocal prayer together in community has the goal of underlining the unity that exists in that group. It helps like make real the connection of one limb to another.
Right.
So if that's okay, as a like the head of the pin, we can put that pin into the vocal prayer and come back to it when we hit that point.
Sounds good.
Does that do for the group?
Yeah.
If we were to come back to this difference between detaching and
Indifference.
indifference, are there any comments on that to bring us back to that topic?
I
Jill
have a
had
quick
something, yeah.
question. Yeah, so would you say that that kind of falls into the category of unconditional? Would you say?
Yeah. I think an indifferent love has a lot in common with a unconditional love. No matter what choice you make, it will not make a difference in the amount that I love you, want the best for you, want you to have the maximum amount of freedom, you to be in as humanizing of a place as possible, you to be as a divine place as possible. And so, yeah, I think there is a lot in common between indifference and unconditionality.
That was how I read kind of what he was getting at with the detachment, kind of like your approach isn't changed because of what the outcome might be.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to like absolutely underscore that, I wanted to shoot us forward to another part of the book. And so if we go to page 232, when John Eudes is talking about detachment from the world, he's absolutely not talking about creation being bad. And so if you go to 232, these are the 34 flames of love, which are some of my favorite parts of this book. And if you've bought the red prayer book in the past, you've got the 34 flames of love. Um, it's some of the juiciest John Eudes. And when he's talking about hatred for the world, I wanted to absolutely make it clear that this is another way that he looks at not what he would define as the world, but creation. So 232, a little more than halfway down, it says, number 31, O God of my life and heart, thou dost ever love me, thou dost employ all thy powers and all creation in heaven and on earth to testify to me of thy love. I learned from St. Augustine, heaven and earth and all creation never cease to tell me that I should love the Lord my God. Everything I hear, see, taste, touch, smell, know. He starts this really long bullet point list. John Eudes is very bullet pointy sometimes. And then we skip down to 233. In a word, all things that are or ever were in created or uncreated being, time and eternity, constitute so many tongues by which thou dost continually proclaim to me thy goodness and thy love. So I absolutely wanted to underline that for John Eudes, he has this word that he uses, which is the world. And in this section, he talks about detachment from the world. Later on, he talks about creation and how creation is just dripping with love. Every single thing that is created on earth and beyond the earth is just screaming out, I love you, I love you, love me, for I have loved you first. That's on page 233. Love me, for I have loved you first. And so when I wanted to have that in the back of your mind while we're going into this talk about hatred for the world. He's not talking about hatred of creation. And if we think about the first couple foundations that we've had so far, faith is this light. And so the world is that which lacks this light. It's about union, and the world that is that which lacks this union. And so when he's saying the world, he's saying this approach to existence that does not have an infinitely loving God as its source and center, right? And so in this third foundation, he goes through and he makes, you could put this into a PowerPoint really easy. He's got a double bulleted list, and he says the Spirit of Christ is this, and the Spirit of the world is this. Spirit of Christ is this, and the Spirit of the world is this, right? And if you go through each one, it can be really evocative and really bring out beautiful things. But if we were to look at it from like a bird's eye view, what's happening here is we have the option of seeing the world as the body of an infinitely loving God, and ourselves as actors in that infinite loving. Or there is the perspective of the world, which sees everyone needing to be out for themselves because there is no great love animating all things. And so when he talks about the world that we must hate, it's this perception of I have to be out for myself because if I don't love me, people will devour me. Mm. That's so, and at the top of page 16, when he's talking about the maxims of Jesus are very mild and holy and reasonable. The standards of the world are diabolical. There's that word again. He's very precise. The diabolical meaning a movement to tear people apart from each other. Right. Um, were there any lines from the section on detachment from the world that really stood out to people that you want to talk about?
I just would like to follow up on what you just said.
Yeah.
I think that what brought to mind to me was the second foundation of being a Christian that we talked about last week,
Mhm.
about the horror of sin is based on the extremities of love. And I think that goes hand in hand with one of the lines that he said, renouncing the world and living in the world as though not of it. And I think that's kind of what we're called to do. We were talking about being consecrated. Like we all participate in society and we all belong. Like we all move around in the world, not creation, and like the world that we're talking about, but being able to be separated and having the foundation of being a Christian in faith and hatred of sin, detachment, and we'll talk about prayer. But I think that's what stood out to me is renouncing the world and living in the world as though not of it. So just like being in it, but being detached. And I think that's what goes hand in hand with being part of the like the mystical body of Christ. Well, that's what Jesus did. Like Jesus came here and was in the world and walked around, was hot. I don't know, all of these different things in his humanity, but without sin. And I think that's kind of what our goal is, right? To imitate Christ as much as we can. So the detachment of that is what stood out to me.
Mhm. Absolutely. And if Jesus existed in creation, which is so dripping with love, he came as an agent of unity. He came as an agent of love. And so the way that Jesus existed in the world but not of it, right? So in creation but not in the world, right? Creation is something that came from the loving God. The world doesn't have that sense of the creator, right? And so this idea of being an agent of love in creation versus being the only one that can fight for ourselves in a world that has no loving creator. That's some of the contrast that John Eudes is drawing here, right? And so he talks about hatred for the world, but it's absolutely not hatred it's for creation.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's being an agent of everything that we've seen so far, of unity, of union, of love among the other subjects around us.
Well said, Steve. I was getting lost on um the difference between creation and world.
Mhm. Mhm. Good. I'm glad that helped. Yeah. Creation has a creator. The
The world
world
does not.
doesn't necessarily, the world doesn't have the light that we talked about in the first foundation. right? Knowing that there's an infinite love out there that animates it all makes us part of creation. Mhm.
Steve,
Mhm.
Steve, may I add something?
Please.
There are concrete consequences of what we are talking about detachment. Two examples. With a group of young students in the Dominican Republic, these students who wanted to serve and to work with the campesinos, with the poor, and Canadian and Americans, I'm not sure. Yeah, when they see an ice cream booth, they have to stop and to buy. So what we say, it's not because we can, it's not because we have the means that we have to treat ourselves and say, oh, I deserve that because I made a big effort. I deserve. And these young people were able to go in front for Canadians, and many Americans also, I don't know, but to skip this and to decide to get detached from their appetite to have an ice cream and have the money and use the money in their pocket to share with the poor is detachment.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, it's older ladies. When I was in another parish, one I consider parish, it's Nativity, and after Mass, poor lady, one of the lady after Mass said, "Well, I have to go and buy some shoes," and a friend would say, "Well, is it necessary? How many pair of shoes do you have?" "Oh, well, my closets are full." And she said, when I converted to Jesus, I learned about detachment. Reflect, please, for what you are going to do with. It's not because you have the means to buy that you should do it. So there are consequences, moral consequences in our behavior. And it's difficult for us to understand that, but spiritually, of course, I sign that. Sorry for this example.
And I'm hoping, to me, that comes absolutely back to this red thread of the mystical body, the red thread that runs through it all. When we're detaching from the world and detaching from ourselves, it's not because we should think that we are horrible
No, of course
abominations
not.
to
No.
creation. It's that we should see ourselves as one limb on the body. And when we're there with los campesinos, when we're there with the poor, with the weak, we should also see them as part of us. We are all limbs with the same head. And so it's not like cultivating a sense of shame. It's not cultivating a sense of self-hatred. It's not cultivating poor self-esteem. It's cultivating this sense of union. I don't have to see the world as a place where I'm in it by myself. And I don't need to see the world as a place where my wants and my shoe rack is more important than the other places that those monies should go. Right. And so it's this I want to pull it back to this red thread of seeing us all as a body. Right. Elizabeth has a thought.
Well, on page 23, kind of towards the second, third paragraph, it says, similarly, although you must exert all your energy in trying to conquer your passions, vices, and imperfections, and to become master of every kind of virtue. I think that's the thing. Like I know someone close one, says, oh, money is bad. No, money is not bad. It just is. It's what we do with it that can be good or bad. And creation, of course, is good. And basically, ice cream or whatever is good. But it's what we do, for what reason we do it. And as Father said,
Mhm.
to me, that's the main thing. It's what we do with whatever is around us.
What is our relationship to the beauty of creation,
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of ice cream, to
Yeah,
enjoy an ice cream with another
it's
part of the body of Christ?
it's a beautiful creation.
Uh-huh.
Of course. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
But to be able to,
And
to decide to take your money to buy, to give to the poor instead of indulging in ice cream, I think it's a very form, and for several people, a huge detachment.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Not because ice cream is bad, of course not.
Mhm. Elizabeth, I also like that you underscored the virtue element
Yeah.
of it. And next week, I hope we talk all about how virtue is like is the positive element that we shoot for. A lot of what we've talked about now has been separating ourselves from the bad
Mm-hmm.
and living virtuously. And so having a virtuous attitude towards money or towards spending or towards time with other people is the way to be Jesus in the world. Because our goal is not to be uh, starved, miserable, um, absolutely alone in our rooms human beings. That's not a robust, alive body of Christ. It's a body of Christ who is alive, active, together, and virtuous in the way that we interact together. Virtues end up becoming like the watchwords of how we become vibrant. And that's something that I hope next week focuses on. So it's a fantastic preview. Any other thoughts?
The top of page 24, the words detachment from everything. The next paragraph says, cultivate this holy detachment. That is, give yourself entirely and unreservedly to Jesus. It's not just negative, it's terribly positive.
Yeah.
That's almost like a what is it called? Like a litany of like prayer. It says cultivate an earnest desire, right? Like it's not like of course cultivate the holy detachment, but it's like a journey. So we're asking him to give us like a desire, like an honest desire for that detachment.
Mhm.
Father Bill, thank you.
And there are some more vulnerable spiritualities that talk about separating ourselves from all desire and removing all desire from us, from ourselves. And there are non-Christian spiritualities that talk about rooting desire out, desire being the root of all suffering. And that is absolutely not a Eudist way. John Eudes wants us to burn with desire for all of the most beautiful things. So we are
I know
in,
somewhere, Steve,
say it again. What'd you
somewhere,
say?
Steve, in the book of Isaiah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Somewhere in the book of Isaiah, it really helped me. When I was going to non-denominational churches, before I converted to Catholicism. Um, I don't remember exactly where it is in Isaiah. I believe it's something close to if we're to share in God's suffering, we must share in his glory, as far as being, one head.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that applies, but that's just what keeps popping up
Well, absolutely.
for
So
me.
God has this burning desire. God's desire is as hot as flame for us all to be united with each other and with Him. And that's what these foundations are telling us, is that our detachment should very much the opposite of our detachment should not reduce our desire. Our detachment should free us to desire even more hotly the union of this body. Because God's desire for the union of his people, the union of his children, the union of the parts of his body is so great. So it's not like trying to reach this spot of like Spock in the Star Trek, right? The ideal Christian is not one that has zero desire. Especially in John Eudes, the ideal Christian is one that burns with as much of God's desire as we can handle for union, for love, for everyone knowing that they're not in it alone. That's when he talks about the world. The world is this sense that I have to do it on my own and no one's going to help me. And the spirit of Jesus is that we're all in this together. We're all part of the same body, right?
Yeah, the last paragraph about detachment, it says it all by quoting the Songs of Songs.
Mm-hmm.
All my things are thine, and thine are mine. And this is Saint John, but the spouse, my beloved to me, and I to him. So it's really a question of love and deep relationship. So it's original to finish a reflection on detachment with these words of love.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys have had a chance to poke into the book Song of Songs in Scripture. It's erotic love poetry. It absolutely is, and it's full of innuendo. It's full of desire. It's full of dripping with love. And so I'm really glad you pointed that out, Father Gerard. Here he is talking about detachment, and the culmination of his section on detachment is erotic love poetry. Like that should give us a picture of what's happening here, right? We are separating ourselves from this cold, lonely space, this cold, lonely existence, and attaching ourselves to this really juicy love story. Mhm. Um, I think any thoughts on that? I think it's a really valuable and really unique perspective for him to talk about detaching essentially from lonesomeness and attaching ourselves to this great current of desire and burning love.
We can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, attaching ourselves to this great current of desire and burning love, right? The picture of the burning heart of Jesus, I think, is the furnace of love. It becomes really relevant in this case. Um, as Eileen pointed out, the detachment from God
Yeah.
it's a rough part of that. There's some sandpaper in that. Um, and and we can treat there's plenty of material that we hear a lot that talks about this. Like, we shouldn't treat God like a vending machine. We shouldn't treat God like something that we just get consolations from, right? Keeping in mind that God is a subject with freedom. And yes, sometimes virtue is its own reward. Other times virtue sucks. Um, and being able to attach ourselves to this burning current of love, even when it burns away the impurities in our love for God. I want God to always choose me as the person that he is merciful to. Sometimes God needs me to work extra hard so he can be merciful to my wife. Like, and it's okay for me to be angry about that, but it's not okay for me to walk away from God because of that. Eileen, it looks like you're talking, but we can't hear you.
There.
There you are.
Okay, so 'cause I told you I read this over several times to try it. So in the middle of page 22, there's a sentence that starts, "You must humble yourself at once, considering yourself most unworthy of any consolation and ready to be stripped of it to assure him that you desire to serve and love him." And this is the part that really helped me. "Not for the consolation that he gives, either in this world or in the next, but for love of himself and merely to please him."
Hmm. That's really tough
Mm-hmm.
Ah, it's also beautiful.
and
Mhm.
really beautiful. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes. Um, there's a current within Catholic spirituality, which is the theme of pure love.
Mhm.
And and it rides this line between um, being really difficult and being really beautiful. Like, it is easy to love someone who showers you with good things. And a lot of times, like, vocation stories or conversion stories have this almost Disney structure to them where I was miserable, I was lonely, and then I gave my life to Jesus, and then I've never been happier. That happens sometimes, yes. And that's great. But then sometimes God needs you to do things that aren't going to make you happier than you've ever been in your life. And if you can't serve love and union when it doesn't feel warm and fuzzy, it's a lacking in pure love and something that hopefully we can get better at. And this detachment from God, he's got a lot of really zinger lines in it, but also some that are really helpful, right? There are great things we get from God, but we can't always get them from God. We have to be okay with going through horrible times, and we have to love. Mhm. Mhm. It writes that line between really difficult and really beautiful. Any thoughts before I think that's the concluding bits of detachment. Any thoughts before we leave detachment?
I was just thinking about how that correlates to our experience with Mass. I think that we have a lot of like our other Christian brothers and sisters who have this experience of service that it's like the lights, the happy feely, like all the warm and
Yeah.
fuzzies. And where for us, we have the beauty of its what we celebrate at Mass, it's a sacrifice. And regardless of whether or not God listens to, not he, of course he listens to us, but answers the prayers in the way that we want our prayers to be answered. I think what Miss Eileen, what she was reading is that regardless of any of that, like our love for himself and merely to please him and merely to
Mhm.
glorify and serve him, I think that that just goes right in, like it just connects us back again to what the sacrifice of the Mass is and
Yeah.
unites us to him. I love hearing Jordan talk about his conversion story and everything that he talks about that fell in love with what he fell in love with his process of becoming Catholic. I'm like, yes, that's what it is. Like we're called to participate in the sacrifice, but we know what comes after the sacrifice, like of the lamb, right? Like we know that there's redemption and the resurrection. We know that story, so
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, like the difference between a liturgy where there is enough ritual mixed in with uh, like the homily versus a Protestant worship service, especially an evangelical service, where it's all about how can the preacher make us as the congregation feel good about ourselves, right? And I like to I think about there's a movie with Steve Carell in it. It's called Dan in Real Life, and it has like this big family and like big family breakfast. And there are times when Steve Carell's character comes down to the family breakfast and he's grouchy and he's hurting and he's had a horrible day and he's been treated horribly and he still gets to have the same participation in the family breakfast as when he's cheerful and loving and effusive, right? I think liturgy, really glad you brought that up, Jocelyn, allows us to be present and there and gives us a place to be, whether we're grouchy or whether we're effusive. We still have the same place at the liturgical banquet. Um, mhm. And it allows the space for this pure love and this detachment, this pure love that goes both ways, that like an evangelical worship service uh, is more vulnerable to feeding only the good feeling parts. So we're really lucky to have Catholic liturgy and this ritual approach as well. Any other thoughts before we leave detachment? Whew, that was a lot, guys.
Yeah.
I think we went high, we went low, we covered a lot of ground. Thank you. Let's and there's so much in the stuff that John Eudes. There's so many lines that you can underline, that you can scribble things on. Um, John Eudes goes into the detail of this, and it's really cool. Now we're going to zoom out from detachment, and we're going to go into his bullet points on prayer. And he lists 5 types of prayer. Anybody want to list them off? His 5 bullet points. It
yes,
doesn't.
I
Go ahead.
can. The various kinds of prayers: mental prayer, vocal prayer, spirit of prayer, spiritual reading, and conversing about God.
Mhm. Yep. So, Eileen, you didn't get to read this ahead of time, but this is page 26 to 32. It's a 6-page section. He talks about these 5 different types of prayer. And if you've been around in the churchy world enough, you've probably heard about different approaches to prayer. And some of these are probably not new to you at all, right? Mental prayer, we talk to God in our heads. Vocal prayer, we say things out loud. And as Jordan underlined for us right away, John Eudes would much prefer that we say one Hail Mary as if we're talking to another person than we say 200 Hail Marys just moving our tongue in the same shape over and over. Right? Uh, there's doing things in the spirit of prayer. This is one of the things where I really like John Eudes' approach.
Were you surprised by these lists of a variety of forms of prayers?
What do you guys think? Was anyone surprised by the things that made it onto the list?
Yeah.
Well, you are better trained than I was when I was at catechism. When I discovered that St. John Eudes put, conversing about God as a form of prayer, it was a revelation for me. Because it was not the way we were trained. We were trained, I don't know you, but vocal prayer.
I remember being not surprised, but like motivated almost. This part on page 24 that we've read together in one of our Eudist like in-person classes. I think Father Bill might have brought this up. And the holy exercise of prayer, and he talks about perpetual prayer is more necessary than the air you breathe, the bread that sustains you, the heart that beats in your breast. None of them are so necessary um, as like a whole life of perpetual prayer. And I think the five forms of prayer that St. John used, the various kinds of prayers, go hand in hand. But um, I was inspired, I guess the word would be, of St. John Eudes' kind of like oomph about prayer, that not even the air, nothing is more important or necessary for us as prayer.
So for the people that did the reading, like, what would you say would be John Eudes' definition of prayer? We know it's not tongue movements, but what is the positive? How would John Eudes say? I love, Jocelyn, that you highlighted that prayer is more necessary to a Christian than air, than food, than ground to walk on. But what is it?
I'm gonna read the prayer is a respectful and loving elevation of your mind and heart to God. It is a joyous meeting, a holy communion, a divine conversation between God and the Christian.
Beautiful. That is, I love that you read exactly that. What page is that on?
24, the end part of 24.
That is absolutely it, right? Prayer is union. It's this red thread we keep coming back to, right? Union, right? So prayer is recognizing that we are a limb on the body. Prayer is and that it's a body full of infinite love. And so therefore, yes, mental prayer is absolutely prayer. And vocal prayer is absolutely prayer. But also logging into Zoom and having a conversation about a blue book is prayer.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah, number 5.
Yeah, number 5. Exactly. Yep. Number 5, conversing about God when it follows these three when it has these three qualities to it, is prayer. And so like a lot of times like a teacher in a class will say, let's start with a prayer, and then we do the sign of the cross, and we're done praying, and we can get to this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're done with the other thing, we'll do our concluding prayer. We'll do the sign of the cross and pray again. But in a Eudist perspective, if prayer is recognizing that we're limbs on the body and rejoicing in our limbness, then coming together on Zoom doesn't need an opening prayer and a closing prayer. And I remember when I was in seminary, I was talking with another guy. It was Marcos, who Father Gerard knows. We had this beautiful long conversation about God and about the beautiful things of God. And then he put a stop to it early. He's like, "I'm sorry, I came down here to pray, and I don't want to be distracted from that." And I felt very sad for him. Like, oh, you're missing something, right? This experience of union together is prayer, but he he had this conception of prayer where you can't do it with your eyes open, right? You can't do it when your mouth is moving. It's such an impoverished, such a poor, you're missing out on so much good, so much union, so much love. If you think that prayer can only happen at a liturgy, that prayer can only happen when your eyes are closed, that prayer can only happen when your mouth is closed, or when you're by yourself, right? So John Eudes has this really beautiful, expansive approach to prayer, and he's not loosey-goosey about it, right? On page 29, he talks about the qualities that make a conversation about God holy and prayerful versus something that's ephemeral and going to evaporate. Right? He talks about you must speak from God, you must draw upon God for your topics and your words. So a conversation that is prayer is one where you're talking about God and God's beautiful creation as well. You must speak in the presence of God. If we're serious about the baptized Christian being the presence of the body of Christ, then like for someone to say, "I'm sorry, I came down here to pray. I need to go into the Blessed Sacrament Chapel instead of have this conversation with you." They're they're missing something. They're missing something really beautiful, right? Because the presence of God in conversation is absolutely a thing. And then thirdly, you must speak in Jesus Christ. You have to, so for a conversation to be prayer, it should be through him, with him, and in him. We've heard that before, right? And so you should speak with the intentions and dispositions of Christ. This is on page 29, the last paragraph. Even as he spoke so nobly and beautifully on earth. So if we think about when Jesus was shooting the shit after dinner, right? Like Jesus was a human being with a body and he had hands and he used those hands to eat dinner. And then he sat around after dinner and talked with people. And that was an absolutely beautiful and holy thing. And when we think about our communing with other people at a human dinner table as something divine, that can become an experience of mystical union. Right? We don't need to chase floating up in the air when we're alone in a chapel as the only experience of mysticism, laughing at a joke after when the dishes are being cleared away from the table absolutely can be mystical. and beautiful and part of this red thread of union and body and humanity and incarnation, right? Any thoughts on that?
I'm really inspired by what you're sharing about if we really take each other's baptism as being like the presence of God, like we take that serious. I remember we had one time confirmation mass with the bishop outside, and one of the priests, he had a like symbol as he was going down to distribute communion. And I remember Father Ricardo saying like that the priest that was falling, that he was really concerned about the Eucharist, that it was like falling on the floor. And Father Ricardo had said like, but the Eucharist that's really important right now is you, like the priest that was falling. Like I needed to pick you up and not the Eucharist. Of course, like they picked it up and took care of that. But that always kind of those two points kind of connected for me, that the Eucharist, that was like the presence of God that was in need of that help to be picked up right away, was the priest. So and that kind of goes in hand with him being the baptized and seeing like the presence of God in that person.
There's there's this there's so much, especially in our time, there's this beautiful emphasis on the presence, the true presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. And I think that's one of the things that's been uniquely emphasized within our generation of Catholicism. And John Paul II has talked about that. And this Eucharistic devotion that is so true and good and beautiful. John Eudes would say, yes, all of that. And it's in the baptized Christian across from you. It's in the baptized Christian that you are, right? And John Eudes likes to quote a homily from St. Augustine when Augustine was talking to the newly baptized. And Augustine held up a host and he said, Christian, behold what you are, become what you receive. That Eucharistic host absolutely needs our our reverence and our devotion. And when we receive it, and everyone else who receives it deserves that exact sense of reverence and mysticism and encounter with God. It's a both and. Mhm. And I really like what Manny shared in the chat. This encounter with each other is destined to be our own unending activity in heaven, right? And so that's a great point. Heaven is perfect community. We see God as God is with no shadows. We see each other as each of us are with no shadows, and we are perfectly united to each other. And so, yes, when you have a great conversation after dinner and people are laughing and feeling really good about being together, that is a foretaste of heaven. That is the beatific vision come true for a moment. When we pray, it is a union, a loving union. And when we laugh together, it is a loving union. Eh, it's this beautiful, I love that eschatological view, the view that Manny brought in, that when we are in union now, it's doing what we will be doing for eternity in heaven. Mhm.
Yeah, right here on page 29, it's from Matthew 18:20. Where there are two or three gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So yeah, prayer together, eating dinner together, having conversation about Jesus together, anything we do together in his name, he's in the midst of us.
Yep.
It is so beautiful how St. John Eudes, he continues on page 29 of the is how different are precious words from the ordinary chat of this world.
Say it again. I think you cut out a little.
Page 29 on the top, when he says, where there are two or three gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. Matthew 18:20. Oh, how different are such precious words from the ordinary chatter of this world. What a holy and profitable way to spend your time, provided you do it in the proper dispositions.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, we can sit together and gossip about someone, or we can sit together and talk about Jesus. So what would we choose?
Mm-hmm. And there's, I imagine that we've all experienced that. There are some conversations that are a lot of wind. It's a lot of words said that are gonna pass away.
Yeah.
But then there are conversations that are one person intensely loving another person and that person loving them back. Those are so much different than conversations where you just complain about other people together. Right? And so those moments uh, where you feel really heard, or you are there for a person who feels really heard. Those are mad in ordinary parlance we can say those are magical conversations.
Could I share a minute, Steve?
Say it again?
Could I share something?
Yeah, yeah.
So one of my very best friends passed away in December, and her daughter called because my friend's birthday would be tomorrow, and then my birthday is the end of the week, and so we always celebrated together. And she called and asked if we could get together, and she wanted to take me out to lunch today. And it was just this her loving me and me loving her back and loving her mother. That's exactly what you're talking about. It was just amazing.
Mm-hmm. To Manny's point, that's a foretaste of heaven.
Mm.
To John Eudes' point, that's Christ's presence. That's the mystical body being a body alive. That is to this chapter's point, that is prayer.
Mm-hmm.
That is so. There's a quote from C.S. Lewis, who was Anglican. He wasn't Catholic, but he was pretty darn close. He says, next to the Blessed Sacrament, the holiest object that can be presented to your senses is the Christian across from you. I think that's a pretty Eudist approach to the mystical presence of Jesus and the baptized. There you go. Jocelyn just dropped a quote from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. What an opportunity to make people feel loved by Jesus through us. And that is so John Hughes talks about the dignity and the obligation, right? There's this beautiful dignity that going to lunch when it's the close to the birthday of your friend that passed away. It can become so beautiful and mystical. And it's not only beautiful and something that you can really enjoy and really desire, it's also something really important to do. There's nothing more important than being Jesus in this world. There's nothing more important than being his body that loves, that listens. There's nothing more important than continuing the incarnation. And that's what we're doing when we pray out loud, when we pray mentally, when we pray through holy conversation with other people. We are continuing the incarnation. It's so every day and so heavenly. It's one of the things I really love about John Eudes. I spent a while chasing a Carmelite spirituality. And the Carmelites talk a lot about when you're alone in your cell doing your private prayer, here's how to make your private prayer more pure. And that's great for cloistered people. But I gotta go to work, you know? I gotta wash dishes. I gotta make dinner. And number 5, conversing about God is beautiful. Number 3 is also beautiful. You're making dinner in a spirit of prayer can still be this beautiful union. Do we know how many times Jesus made dinner for Mary and Joseph? We don't know how many. It could have been a lot. When Jesus was making dinner for his family, what was he like? What was that like? Okay. Well, next time we have to make dinner for somebody, it can become this mystical experience. Eh, mhm. Really good stuff.
May I share something,
Please do.
Brother? Yeah. I spent 16 years with the Benedictine nuns over in Manila, the Philippines. So from kinder up to I graduated college, I was in that school, Saint Scholastica's College, and our I don't know I think motto they say it's ora et labora, so it's very much exactly what you just discussed. It's work and prayer. So like we were taught all the time that we were in school that we should make everything that we're doing, all our work, all our studies and everything else a prayer. So it's ora et labora, pray and work. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And if I may, John Eudes might say, ora est labora.
Oh yeah.
To
Is
work
is
is to pray
yeah, right.
when you do it in the spirit of Jesus, right? It's
Yeah,
a development, make it
right,
even more closely united.
right. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So, Steve, in the divine will, we
Mhm.
say, I fuse my human will with your divine will. Would that be also a good
Absolutely.
way?
And I think that actually is a great lead up to next week, when we talk about Christian virtue. When we are virtuous, the distinction between our will and God's will gets very, very small because we are being a virtuous human being. And that's what Jesus did when he was on earth too. And so our goal should absolutely be for our will to be merged with the will of God. And the way that we know that's happening is when we grow in Christian virtue, which is 100% the topic of next week. So next week, go ahead.
What's the homework for next week, Steve?
Yes. Next week is a bigger chunk of reading. I want to cover between page 33 and 73.
73.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to stay to like 12 pages, and that's like 40 pages. And so one of the things I'd like to do is, if you know you're going to attend next week, skim through it and see if there's a virtue on those pages that catches your attention, that God might be leading you towards, and drop into the WhatsApp chat. I would like to talk about this virtue, and see if for 10 minutes you can summarize for the rest of us the what John Eudes says about that virtue. So we have humility of mind, humility of heart. We have confidence or self-abandon. We have obedience or submission. We have charity or zeal. So do some skimming, do some, see what bubbles up to the skin of your soul, see what God catches your attention with, and drop into the WhatsApp chat. I would like to summarize this section, please.
Bill, I think we have a conflict. I don't have the date on my calendar. You know, we celebrate the Holy Heart of Mary the 8th of February, but we will celebrate it the 9th, I think.
Is there going to be a Eudist event on Monday night next week?
Yeah, we should have got the information. Ralda, don't you have the information?
Information, what I was told that there's no celebration because for the Heart of Mary because it's falling on Sunday.
Yes, but
is there different information now?
No, but I don't know. We thought also maybe of celebrating on Monday. Maybe not. So okay. But just I want to tell everyone that it's a very important celebration. If we cannot celebrate because of a calendar of activities, it's important that we at least think that in other part of the congregation, people are going to go to celebrate.
Father Bill, we want to celebrate too.
We'll find a way to celebrate that. And if it's not in person, we're getting close to the end of time. But
because it's not on my calendar, but I wanted to.
Because at 6:30 p.m. is a Zoom.
Yeah.
That could be a great celebration, like you say.
Exactly.
Imagine prayer with others.
Talking about God? That sounds like a type of prayer. So we may not be able to celebrate the Holy Heart this year as Eudes together with a liturgy. But if not, we'll definitely celebrate it with a Zoom together. Which, if John Eudes could Zoom, he definitely would call Zoom a method of prayer.
The sixth one.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions before we leave? I'm really glad everybody chipped in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for contributing.
I just want to add something before you go. Announcement. For the March 16, somebody asked me about the prices. We don't have final information yet. So far, it's going to be $30 for the day, including confession and lunch. And we have the option to stay for dinner, and that's an additional $20. So far, that's the information that we have. But I will send an email out once everything is finalized. So it's either $30, including confession and lunch, or $50, including lunch and dinner. But we have to give them a heads up so they can cook for us. Otherwise, we can't eat their food.
We will work out the details on that by WhatsApp and email as it gets closer. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Okay.
On February the 13th, it's a Friday. Remember, it's Coffee with St. John Eudes.
Yes.
You imagine the topic will probably be the Holy Heart of Mary, and that wonderful professor and confrere Father Gerard will present and pray with us. Friday the 13th.
You make me be red.
So if you can make it to Carlsbad in the morning of Friday, February 13th, we'll get to hear Father Gerard's voice on the Holy Heart of Mary. All right, guys.
Thank you.
For praying together with us.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone.
Steve. Thank you.
Amen.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.